My name is John Salim Joubran. I am from the Shakara Hamule.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Jerusalem in 1936.
Please state your mother and father's full names.
My father's name is Salim Hanna Khouri Joubran, and my mother is Zahava Ingberg.
Please state your grandparents' full names on both sides.
Grandfather was Hanna Khouri Hanna Joubran, and my grandmother was Fadiya Joubran. On my mother's side is Moshe Ingberg and Panina Ingberg.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father was a customs officer in the British mandate in Palestine. My mother was a homemaker.
Do you have any personal memories of your grandparents?
Unfortunately, I was too young when I was born. They died when I was too young.
What traditions did you practice while growing up, and do you still practice the same traditions?
Traditions of a typical Ramallah youngster. We still practice it. I grew up in Ramallah and went to a friend's school, left in the first secondary in 1950, went to the United States. I finished my high school in Detroit, Michigan, and went to Wayne State University in Detroit, where I graduated in 1956. I continued to write, read, and speak Arabic, writing to my aunts and uncles and reading articles. But unfortunately, as they got older and passed away, my Arabic dwindled. I can still speak, I understand, I read, but it has to be properly مشكلة كفاية حتى أعرف أحكي. What else?
Describe your home in Ramallah. How many bedrooms, bathrooms, did it have modern amenities? Did you share a room?
Our house in Ramallah had 2 bedrooms, a living room and a kitchen. We had no dining room. 1 bathroom, running water, shower and bath, and the amenities. That's it.
Did you share a room with anyone? If so, with whom?
Our bedroom was shared by father and mother and 3 brothers.
Where did you live in Ramallah, and who else lived with you?
I don't know that we had any specific areas, but there was, if we were to describe it at the time, it will be next to Cinema Jamil, across from the Kaddura family home. But can't explain any areas. We did not have addresses or names of streets or anything like that.
Did you live in that house the whole time you lived in Ramallah? If not, where did you move?
Well, we moved as my father's work required in Jaffa, in Haifa, and then in Ramallah, in that house I described.
So as a child growing up in Ramallah, what did you do for fun? Did you go biking with family?
We played with our cousins, soccer, and different games. Takawigri is one of them. we'd fly kites and handballs. We had soccer, and that's about it.
Just when I asked you, can you do it like full sentences? Because my voice won't be in the video. So like my childhood was.
Oh, okay.
Were you able to travel easily from village to village back then?
In my younger days in Palestine, we were free to move anywhere we wanted to. We visited relatives all over Palestine. We had some in Jaffa, Ramleh, Haifa, Nazareth, Jericho. We often went to Jericho and the Dead Sea in the wintertime. And we're in Jaffa for swimming. Occasionally we'd go to Amman and visit relatives in Jordan and visit relatives in Lebanon for holidays.
What is one of your most vivid memories of Ramallah growing up here?
I have many beautiful recollections of Ramallah. As I was a young child, we'd go on holidays with the elders, my father and uncles, visit different families, pay our respects, wish them an Eid alayhum, and especially on Easter when we would go and collect Easter eggs. And, we'd compete who cracks whose egg, and if we cracked their eggs, we collected it, and our times I'd go home with a bag full of broken eggs. Christmas was fun, but it was more of going to church and attending liturgy and staying up late.
When the Arab-Israeli conflict began, what were some of the immediate changes you experienced living in Ramallah?
The first thing you noticed is that the banks closed, and my dad lost his job, and the uncertainty of living and the future was like a cloud. The news of different military activities were disturbing and created anticipated fear and uncertainty. When finally the truce came and went from 48 to 1950, we were wondering what is the future going to be like. Jobs were scarce. The economy was floundering. Unfortunately, my dad had placed his name on quota to go travel to the United States, and it was granted, and we managed to travel to the United States in 1950.
How long did you live in Ramallah during the conflict?
From 47 to 1950.
Can you say I lived in Ramallah?
I lived in Ramallah since my birth until 1950.
What did you and your family do to survive?
it is a dream that if you were going to say how to survive, at my young age, I didn't really wonder very much. I was so dependent and confident in my father's ability to provide for us. We had food on the table and limited travel. There was a lot of apprehension and uncertainty.
Where did you go to school in Ramallah?
The Friends Boys School.
You say, I went to school.
Oh, I went to the Friends Boys School.
Did you work? If so, what did you do?
I did not work. I did apprenticeship as a mechanic in a car garage. But there was no opportunities to actually earn a living at that time.
When and where did you meet your spouse, and did you know her in Ramallah?
I met my spouse in 1964 at the Ramallah Convention in New York City.
How and when did you get engaged and married?
How and when? We met in 1964, and it was a fast courtship. And by November 8th, 1964, we were married.
Did you go on a honeymoon?
Yes, we went to honeymoon to Mount Airy Lodge in Pennsylvania, which was a newlyweds honeymoon resort.
What is your occupation and what is your spouse's occupation?
I graduated as a chemist and worked with my first job was with Boeing aircraft. And after that, I worked for a pharmaceutical company called Park Davis in Detroit, for which I stayed for 46 years until I retired. My spouse used to work in an insurance company, but after we were married, she became a homeowner, managed the house and the family.
How many children do you have?
We have 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy.
Tell us about leaving Ramallah for the U.S. When did you leave? What mode of transportation did you take? How long was the journey? Who traveled with you?
We left, once we got the visa to go to the United States, we managed to get booking on a ship from Genoa, Italy to New York, and a connecting ship from Beirut to Genoa. The first leg of the adventure from Beirut to Genoa, we went through Egypt and Greece and a couple of Italian ports. There was about 25 people from Ramallah on that ship. After Genoa, we switched to the Italian ship, and they continued through different ports. We finally met in the United States. From Italy to the United States, we went with an Italian ship with one other family from Palestine. They were not from Ramallah. In New York, we were met by a cousin who helped us to get to Detroit.
So you settled where?
We settled in Detroit, where I went to Northwestern High School to finish my high school education, and started at Wayne State University. I got a degree in chemistry in 1956.
How old were you when you traveled to the U.S.?
Let's see, I was 13 and a half when we started to the United States.
Describe your feeling the first time you landed in the U.S.
It was, as we landed in the United States, it was exciting to finally reach land and see the Statue of Liberty and see the tall buildings. And anticipation, knowing the future and seeing the group of people landing from that big ship, putting us in groups depending on our last names in alphabetical order, gathering the luggage and trying to make sure that all the luggage arrived and was accounted for. Excited to see the magnitude of people that were there, each one nervous, some of them probably like us, migrating with all their belongings. Fortunately for us, we could speak English because I studied English in a French school. So it was not as traumatic as other people who were next to us who could not understand a word of English and had to depend on translators. It was anxiety, but it was hopeful anticipation.
Were your children born in the U.S.? If so, how many?
All 5 children were born in the United States.
Talk about your immigration experience and living in the U.S. How easy was it to assimilate or blend into the American society?
If I can remember my younger days, it was always with anticipation of coming to finish my studies in the United States. So it was like a dream come true that we immigrated when I was still young. And the assimilation was easy in that, for me, it was a chance to earn a living. I became a paper boy where I deliver papers to customers and collect money and pay my bills. So I learned how to act like a businessman. It was more difficult for my parents because my father, being a customs officer, did not have the skills to work in the U.S. business. Ended up working in factories as a manual laborer. And that was very difficult for him. My mother worked as a nurse and tried to subsidize the income so we can survive. My 2 brothers, of course, were younger than I and to go to high school. But when the time came for them to work, as my dad opened a store, they helped in the store and sustained the living income for the family.
Talk about
My what?
Your neighbors in the US.
My neighbors. I don't know if we're going to talk about neighbors. There was really not much time to cultivate any neighborhood friends. When we came to Detroit, there was about 8, 9 families from Ramallah. And it was easy for us to communicate with them and do things with them. So we didn't feel like we needed any outsiders, any neighbors, or anybody else. It took a while before we had time to interact with non-Ramallahites. As students, we have the families of the students became friends, and we interacted with them. It was a strange that they knew very little about Palestine and about Arabs, or the fact that we are Christians. But we adapted pretty well, I guess, because we had to. We're very flexible people.
Do you have any family members remaining in Ramallah, or are they all in the US?
The immediate family is all in the US because we immigrated together. But as the extended family goes, after 48, they scattered, although most of them ended up in the United States. Some of them came through Latin America, some of them came through Europe, and some settled in Jordan, while others settled in Lebanon.
Since immigrating to the US, have you traveled back to Ramallah? If so, when and how often?
I used to work in India and travel 3-4 times a year from Detroit to India. And in the process, I would make a stop in Ramallah. That started in 1967 until the late 70s. And I'd visit my aunts and uncles and whoever are still living here. After that, there was very little incentive for me to go to Ramallah until late 90s, when I started coming here every year.
Describe how Ramallah feels to you since leaving.
It's a pleasure, anticipate and recollect present memories. What a disappointment to see concrete buildings sprouting instead of fig trees and apple trees and apricot trees. The orchards are no longer there. The view of the mountains with the various trees and living greenery is no longer there, and that is disappointing.
Do you still stay in touch with people in Palestine?
Yes. I stay in touch with them because I come very often, and I have interacting on a charitable basis. First of all, I'm a member of the Ramallah Foundation, and for the last 20 years I've been president. Part of our charitable contributions are the Ramallah hospitals and what is now known as the Palestinian medical complex and a laboratory. And we also support the senior citizen home, and we started providing scholarship funds for university studies, and we continue to support education, health services, and social services in the form of the senior citizen home.
What are your thoughts about Ramallah now and what's happening with Jerusalem?
I'm impressed with the progress in Ramallah and the fact that it survived under very difficult conditions. But I miss the closeness that the Ramallah family had as I was growing up, where no matter where I went, whichever street I took, I'd have families and greet friends and be welcomed, where now I hardly know anybody except the ones that I select or I'm appointed to meet.
And what are your thoughts about what's happening with Jerusalem?
That is one of the biggest disappointments, that the world community has abandoned us and completely negated all promises that they have made in the last 100 years towards preserving Jerusalem for the Palestinians, for the Christians, and Arabs in general, and protecting the sanctity of all the religious places.
Do you think you will see peace in your lifetime?
I'm always hopeful, but I have doubts.
A full sentence.
Okay. I am hopeful, and I pray that we will have peace in my lifetime. But the more I read and hear about the developments in the world and in this part of the country, it is not easy to predict whether it will be in our lifetime. History shows that Jerusalem will always be for Jerusalem and the Christians and the Muslims. And whatever you see of forces coming in and conquering, eventually they disappear and it goes back to the original people who were designed to live here. Christ and the Christian community.
What are you doing to help the peace process?
What it is to help the peace process, it is not easy to help. I participate mostly to encourage people in the United States and in Ramallah, of Ramallah origin, to get educated, to make a good living, to support themselves and their relatives so that we continue to grow as a community and as Palestinian people.
And what are you doing in support of the Palestinians?
Being a Palestinian is a special thing for me. I'm proud of it, and I get very annoyed and aggravated when things don't go our way. I try to talk to as many people as I can in the United States about Palestine, about our history, about our unfortunate situations because of outside influences. So things are happening without our control or acceptance. I donate my efforts, my time, and my money to whatever causes that promote Palestinian growth, Palestinian recognition, and Palestinian stability.
If there's anything else you want to add, feel free.
No, I think that's enough. I already taken too much time.
Is there anything special that you would like to talk about your childhood while you went through the Intifada?
As a Palestinian, it was always difficult for me to digest and accept all the things that were happening, which I thought were unfair to Palestinian people. It's a feeling of helplessness when you talk to people in the United States and they have no appreciation, even though they say, yes, we know that it's unfair, but this is the way life is, and we have to accept it. And my disappointment that all our Arab neighbors and cousins and supporters have not been able to do much to help us. If I had stayed in Palestine, I would have probably been dead by now because of all the frustrations that I have felt would have surfaced and would have been rewarded by harsh activities, I guess.